Bienvenidos a El Cafecito del Día, brought to you by the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. Our conversations are inspired by the moments of togetherness that nuestra comunidad shares over un cafecito.
Bienvenidos a un nuevo Cafecito del Día. Soy Carmen Rodríguez. Behind every headline about immigration enforcement, hay una familia whose lives change in an instant. In today's episode, we share a conversation with Gerardo Orozco, hijo de Eustaquio Orozco, a dedicated LCLAA member, tireless organizer, and a strong voice de los trabajadores inmigrantes. Eustaquio was detained in Minnesota last January. This moment has deeply impacted those close to him. We'll hear la historia de la familia Orozco and how Eustaquio has changed the family's life. This is a conversation about love, resilience, immigration, and the strength of a family navigating uncertainty while honoring the legacy of a community leader. Acompáñenos. Thank you, Gerardo, for being with us en este Cafecito del Día.
Hola Carmen, gracias por tenerme aquí.
To start a conversation, muchos conocen a tu padre as a labor leader, a committed organizer, but who is Eustaquio? Who is he at home, as a father, as a friend?
Well, I knew my dad for much longer before he became a labor organizer. To me, he was always my hardworking, blue-collar dad who he led an honest life, working construction to provide for his family. Como papá, he was always firm but fair. Like any kid, I was not always the best behaved. So I earned a few stern conversations and scoldings. Pues me regañaba cuando me lo merecía. I wasn't always happy about that. But looking back on it now, esos regaños, I understand now how good of a father he really was to both my little sister and I. In his family, people always look at him as the most responsible and well-behaved person that they know. He's looked at like as that by his brothers and parents. He's always stepping up to helping someone who needs help or guidance. Really just a super nice, charismatic guy. That's always been him, always smiling.
Can you take us back al momento de la detención de Eustaquio? What was that date like for you and your family? And how has life shifted since then?
Sí, pues honestamente no sé si otro día ha sido tan difícil or as hectic and draining as that one. At least for me, perhaps going to the State of the Union address a few days ago comes a little close, but for many others in our communities, having a loved one ripped away from us by the government is one of the worst and most traumatic experiences for any family. That day, we really just tried to stay focused. At least I did, going from one task to the next. I know when my uncle called me to say that my dad had just called him to say that he was being taken, first thing was figuring out where's his car, where do I have to go to pick up his car, because it was just off the highway. Y cuando por fin pude ir a la casa de mis papás to go see my mom and pick her up, because I wasn't going to just leave her at her house. She's been staying with me ever since. But before we left, I knew we had to find important documents like tax filings, documents, and just other documents we would later need, and piecing together everything we would have to take care of until my dad got back. Because he always took care of my mom. He really took care of a lot. And so I just needed to make sure that I knew what to do so everything stayed afloat until he could come back. Recuerdo que se lo llevaron como a las 10 de la mañana. Y no fue hasta esa noche que we finally let ourselves breathe and come to terms with our feelings of it all. Hearing that they were finally able to locate him at the Whipple building and that he now had an A number. That was the first time that day that I felt just emotionally like breaking down, because my first thought was he went over 20 years living a peaceful life in his country, an honest and peaceful life. And now the government had him detained just because of a prejudicial system that demands papeles while constantly getting rid of avenues for people to get those papeles, those papers. I know that if it was easy to get the papers, who wouldn't, right? But it's not like they make it easy for any one of us.
Was it hard for you as family to realize lo que estaba pasando?
I can only speak for me. Pues por supuesto que fue muy difícil, pero I always knew we were immigrants, and I knew that my dad was undocumented. I mean, I was undocumented until a few months ago when the government finally decided to give me my appointment in Juarez, and I was able to get my green card. It was so difficult knowing that it finally happened, but I think as an immigrant in this country, you always live with that constant reminder in the back of your mind that the government could just come for you any day. And with Operation Metro Surge, it's exactly what they intended to do. Just come after our communities, come after our families when we were just living peaceful lives.
What was it like growing up with a father so deeply committed to organizing and defending workers? ¿Y cómo esto influyó en tus valores and your sense of justice?
My dad became a labor organizer while I was still in college. And so growing up, I always just thought of my family as blue collar, hardworking. And I always respected the power of unions because I'm a big nerd. I'm a student of history and I could live the reality of what being part of a union, the benefits that comes with that for working class people. Because it was through him having union membership when he worked construction that I had health insurance, that our family had health insurance. And so once he became a labor organizer, that really just reaffirmed for me the values that my dad and my mom raised me with. This kind of public service, being a labor organizer, it's what led me to being a public servant as well. I work for the state of Minnesota and I love what I do. And it's because I get to help others. That's so much of the values that my parents instilled in me. And I can't see myself doing anything other than serving my Minnesota communities because that's who my parents raised me to be. That's what my dad has embodied ever since he became a labor organizer in 2019.
What are the challenges your family is facing en estos momentos o cosas that people may not always see?
Honestly, the main challenge is just missing him as much as we do. Nosotros tratábamos de cenar juntos una vez a la semana, and I love my mom's cooking. And we've had so much of that these last 7 weeks here, but it's not the same to sit down at the dinner table without my dad present. Financially, I know that he had savings and the mortgage has been getting paid from those savings. My wife and I have jobs, and so we've been trying to keep everything afloat. And we've had a lot of generosity from so many people in our lives, in our communities. That's been extremely helpful. The main challenge is just we miss him. We want him back in Minnesota where he belongs.
Your family story is one of migration, sacrificio, perseverancia, and resilience. Where does your family draw strength from this situation right now?
Well, right now we've been drawing strength from each other as family. Our family's always been close knit, and this has only strengthened our bond. Of course, we also draw strength from members of our community who love and care about my dad, but we also draw strength from nuestra fe, our faith in God, in Jesus, and our faith that in no time we will hopefully have my dad back in Minnesota with us.
What does resilience look like for you?
We've had to be resilient every single day. Like I said, we miss him a lot, but resilience to me each and every day that I wake up is just keeping everything in order in my mind and figuring out and knowing what the next step is. My family and community has been extremely helpful every day as we figure out what comes next, especially my sister-in-law. She's an immigration attorney who has given us so much guidance and helped connect us with people as we figure out the legal options and iron out the plans going forward. And just taking that next step, to me, that's what resilience is for now.
In the midst of uncertainty, how are you and your family honoring el legado de tu padre, Eustaquio, and how we can continue our fight and our commitment to our communities as your father has done all these years?
Well, I know that my mom has been very involved in helping people that she knows who need help to help them get connected with resources. I know right now people are really needing assistance with rent and with utilities, and I've been helping her give her a few resources to share with others. And as a public servant, trying to help people is what I do. So I've tried to be as focused as possible at work and help as many people out as I can. More than ever, there's people in our communities who need help right now. And even if things wind down when it comes to immigration enforcement by the government, I know the government's not going to leave our communities alone. They'll continue to make life difficult for our communities for a long, long time. So we need to keep being there for each other and helping each other out. That's what my dad would be doing right now. The mission hasn't changed. And so we need to keep doing what we can while we work to get my dad back because I know he's going to jump right back at it once he's back.
As you share with us, you were at the State of the Union last February 24. What would you ask to your representatives today? And what will be your call to action for the community that your father has served?
Honestly, this goes to all of Congress. They have a responsibility to pass actual immigration reform that addresses the concerns that people have, but also respects the dignity of immigrants. We should have had reforma migratoria hace más de una década, but we need it now more than ever. And as I think about it, it cannot be anything less than what we had in the 1980s when Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act in 1986, which gave many people amnesty. I see that as a bare minimum because of everything that's happened, and we need more avenues for people to reach legal status and on a pathway to citizenship, not less options, and not a class of immigrants stuck with just a work permit. We need a system that incentivizes legal immigration, but also makes that legal immigration a reasonable and possible process so that future generations don't have to deal with this kind of cruelty ever again, because immigration and just seeking a better life won't ever stop.
Thank you, Gerardo, for all that your family is doing for our communities. Thank you for being with us in este Cafecito del Día, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
La historia de la familia Orozco reminds us that immigration enforcement does not happen in isolation. It touches families, workplaces, and entire communities. There are ways to stand in solidarity with all immigrant families suffering and struggling while they are facing anti-immigrant policies. Stay informed, share this story, contact the LCLAA National or the LCLAA Twin Cities chapter to support, and let's continue lifting up las voces of those whose contributions to our communities too often got unrecognized. Today, we've heard not just about detention, but about a father, a son, a family, and a legacy of service a nuestros hermanos y hermanas. The story of Eustaquio y su familia reflects something larger, the resilience of immigrant families who continue to contribute, organize, and care for their communities even in the face of uncertainty. El legado de Eustaquio continues through his family, his community, and the many people's lives he has touched. To Gerardo y a toda su familia, la familia Orozco, thank you for sharing your story and reminding us that behind every struggle for justice is a deeply human story. We invite you to continue listening, learning, and standing with the families and communities who make our labor movement stronger. Nos escuchamos en el próximo Cafecito del Día.
El Cafecito del Día is part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network